Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's Credentials Committee. I would like to call our virtual meeting to order. My name is Jim Roosevelt, and along with my friend Lorraine Miller, we are honored to serve as co-chairs of this important committee. Thanks to all of the Credentials Committee members who have been elected in every state and territory for being with us today. We also want to acknowledge everyone who is online watching the live stream of our meeting. Please unmute your microphone for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Please remute your microphone. Lorraine, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, fellow Credentials members. I'm Lorraine Miller from the great hot state of Texas, and it is truly an honor to be with you today as we take up the very important work of the Credentials Committee. We're pleased to introduce to you the Credentials Committee Vice Chairs. These individuals are leaders in their own right, and we appreciate each of them for serving in this leadership role. They are, we'll do a quick little introduction here. Tony Burgos. Tony, kind of raise your hand there. He's the CEO of Tony Burgos and Associates, and he has over 55 decades, not 50 decades, 5 decades of business, government, civic involvement, and legislative affairs experience. All right, we've been around a minute or two, haven't we, Tony? Mr. Burgos is also a member of the Democratic National Committee. Our next vice chair is Shafari Dougal. Hi. I didn't want to emasculate your name.
Oh, no, it's Shafali Razdan Dougal, but so good to see everybody.
Great. Ms. Dougal is a political strategist and activist and serves as the national co-chair of Women for Biden and the deputy national finance chair at the Democratic National Committee. Ms. Dougal serves on numerous boards and commissions and was appointed by President Barack Obama to the United States Holocaust Memorial Council. Welcome. Our next vice chair is Keith Harper. Keith, where are you? Well, Keith is an attorney and diplomat, and from 2014 to 2017, he served as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations Human Rights Council. He's a member also of the Democratic National Committee. Maura Healey. Ms. Healey serves as the Attorney General of Massachusetts and is the first openly gay Attorney General in the United States. As Attorney General, she has been an advocate for the residents of Massachusetts and has led efforts to push back on the Trump administration. Yes. I would like to also introduce you to our wonderful DNC staff that help ensure that we are able to do this important work. In many instances, these are the folks that really do a lot of the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week work to make this committee work. Patrice Taylor is the lead co-conspirator here. Patrice manages the Office of Party Affairs. Rick Broylan, Alicia Dyer, and Elizabeth Maripin all work in the DNC's Office of Party Affairs. The inevitable Miles Fernandez is the director of the Office of the DNC Secretary's Office. He leads the team that will certify all convention participants, including the members of this committee. He's kind of important. Graham Wilson and Andrea Levin serve as our DNC counsels. Great people. Abby Watson, Matt Thylan, Carly Spraggins, and the DNCC tech team have been working around the clock to help facilitate our virtual meetings. I'd like to call on our friend and the DNC chair, Tom Perez. Hi, Tom. Tom is a dedicated public servant and has spent his career fighting for civil and voting rights. When Tom became the chair of the DNC, he took on the important job of rebuilding the party and making sure Democrats were playing in all states and electing Democrats at all levels. He and the DNC team have done just that. We see a DNC that is thriving and doing the hard work to make sure we are successful in November. Please join me in welcoming our friend and DNC chair, Tom Perez.
Well, good afternoon or good morning or good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you so much, Chair Miller and Chair Roosevelt, for your leadership and your friendship over the course of this journey. Thank you to all of our vice chairs and everyone whom you mentioned. Putting this together in a non-COVID world is a challenging proposition. Getting this together in these extraordinary times is that much more of a challenge. And I'm so proud of the DNC team for the work that they're doing. I really want to say a special shout out to every one of them. And Lorraine mentioned them, really solid staff doing so much work. And as you probably know, we have 3 standing committees as we get to the convention, and we have completed the work of 2 out of the 3. The platform committee met Monday of this week. Then we had the rules committee yesterday, and this is the 3rd, last but not least, the credentials committee. And what we observed throughout the processes of all 3 of these committees were dedicated Democrats getting to work. Our unity continues to be our greatest strength and Donald Trump's worst nightmare. We had spirited debates in the other 2 committees, and I suspect we may have some debate here today, but we never confuse unity and unanimity, because what we understand very vividly is what unites us far exceeds what our differences are. We never confuse debate and division. We can have debate on issues, but we come together because we understand that in 95 days, we have the most important election of our lifetime. And frankly, 95 days is the last day you can vote. September 14th is election day, or the beginning of election day, for instance, in the great state of Arizona. So we know there's a lot of work to do. And as we say at the DNC, there's 95 days till the weekend. And the work you are doing here on the Credentials Committee is critically important to that journey. And as members of this Credentials Committee, you embody the diversity, the strength, the courage, and of all of our convention delegates and Democrats across the nation. Now, this year's convention is unlike any convention we've seen. And I'm looking around and I see people like Jim Roosevelt and Antonio Burgos and others who've been to 1 or 2 conventions in their day, but I don't think they've ever been to a convention quite like this one. Good leadership, I've learned a long time ago, means you've got to adapt to every situation. My father always used to say in his very broken English, you always have to count on the unexpected. And boy, we've seen a lot of that. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. And as we prepare for our convention, we know that first and foremost, we must put safety first. And that is exactly what we have done. From the outset, we have put safety first. I am absolutely confident that we will have an exciting, inspirational convention anchored in the great city of Milwaukee, the great state of Wisconsin. And I'm so looking forward to seeing Joe Biden accept the nomination in Milwaukee. We're so looking forward to a great week there. And you know what? As you well know, the stakes couldn't be higher. This is indeed the most important election of our lifetime because Donald Trump is the most dangerous president, I believe, of our lifetime and one of the most dangerous presidents in American history. We've seen what's happened over the last 3 years. The guardrails of democracy have been absolutely broken by this president. His chronic incompetence has led to death, has led to unprecedented job loss. Just look at what the economic news of yesterday was. We haven't seen GDP drop of that nature on record. We literally, the Great Depression was probably the last time we saw a GDP drop of this magnitude. And his incompetence has allowed this pandemic, frankly, to spiral out of control. And as you know, that has cost people their lives and their livelihoods. And on top of that, we have a civil rights pandemic occasioned by a president who is constantly putting gasoline on the fire. That's why, you know, every so often in our nation's journey to form a more perfect union, a person meets the moment. And I think that person has met the moment here, and his name is Joe Biden. We need a president with experience. We need a president with empathy and compassion who can understand the struggles of people. We need a uniter in chief. We need someone who can solve problems. We need someone who's both a dreamer and a doer, and that is Joe Biden. I've known him for 25 years. We've got people on this committee who've known him even longer. And we know Joe Biden will always look out for the best interests of the American people because he has spent more than half a century standing up for those who need it most, for the union worker fighting for a better wage, for the student marching to end gun violence, for women working to stop domestic abuse, for peaceful protesters speaking out against police misconduct, for the LGBTQ activists pushing for full equality, for the dreamers building a life in this country, the only country that they call home. Joe Biden will have everybody's back. And this election, we know, is so critically important. And it's more than about Joe Biden or Donald Trump. It's also really about two competing visions for America. Because we saw when Trump launched his campaign 5 years ago, he had a dark vision for America. He continues to have a dark vision for America, a vision where we only succeed if the immigrant fails, this zero-sum politics. But in November, I'm confident we're going to usher in a new era, an era of justice and equality and opportunity, economic prosperity, an era of bold American leadership where our nation's strength is not defined by force or fear-mongering, but by the compassion and dignity we show each other and the world. That's what's going on, folks. And these are the stakes. They couldn't be higher. We have a lot of work to do here today, but I am confident that we can complete this work. This is, again, the last of our 3 standing committees. And we are so grateful for the time you have taken. And I'm particularly grateful for the work of the chairs and the vice chairs and our staff. So let's get right to the business here of the Credentials Committee. Thank you so much to everyone for your work. And I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair, and to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for your leadership.
Great, thank you, Tom, for your energetic leadership. It's a privilege to serve on this committee as one of the co-chairs with Jim, and particularly during such an important moment in our nation's history. Ladies and gentlemen, America is in a crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic has devastated families, small businesses, and our entire economy. But it didn't have to be this bad. Donald Trump's incompetent leadership cost at least and more than 150,000 lives that could have been saved and plunged our economy into recession. This moment calls on us, ladies and gentlemen, to come together as a party to defeat this president and repair the soul of our nation. It calls on us to make bold action to end this pandemic, to put Americans back to work safely, and to re-energize our economy. It calls on a new era of compassion for our fellow Americans. This is a trying time for so many people, and we cannot let this president's fear-mongering divide us. As Democrats, we must unite around our shared values by putting Joe Biden in the Oval Office and electing Democrats up and down the ballot across our country. I'm proud that our convention is putting the health and the safety of American people first. We are engaging voters in new ways and ensuring science and truth lead us forward. All of us will remember this moment in our history as challenging, but let us also remember it is uniting. Let's run this sad excuse for a president out of the White House once and for all. And if you need a prescription or a roadmap to do that, I had the privilege of serving with John Lewis as his floor assistant when he first became a leader in the Democratic House leadership. I commit to you to look at the New York Times editorial that he had placed yesterday, the day of his funeral. It's absolutely what we need to do to get this going and to elect Joe Biden. Jim?
Thank you very much, Lorraine. And good day, everyone, wherever you may be around the world. I want to say what an honor it is to serve with all of the Credentials Committee members and with our wonderful chair, Tom Perez. I also want to say particularly, it's a pleasure for me to serve with our vice chairs, our outstanding Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey, and my good friend Tonio Burgos from New Jersey. Great to be with all of you. I want to echo what Tom and Lorraine had to say. We are here today to show our steadfast fidelity to our party's values of inclusion and opportunity, especially in the face of such daunting challenges ahead. I think we probably all saw the headline today about the devastation that we are facing with our economy. It makes me think of what President Obama and Joe Biden had to face in 2009, and they brought us through that, and Joe Biden can bring us through this again. The American people, in fact, are through with this president and his daily parade of lies, hate, and conspiracy theories, not to mention his weird medical theories. They want a president who has their back and cares about their future, and they want a president who shares their values. Democrats are the party of the people. As my grandfather, Franklin D. Roosevelt, did in 1933, we will build an economy that works not for the wealthy and well-connected, but for American workers and their families. We will fight for the rights of all Americans, no matter who they are, where they come from, who they love, or how they pray. And we will reinvent American leadership at home and abroad. That vision will be on display at our convention, and I can't wait for the world to see our party come together to nominate Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee for the President of the United States. Mark my words, Donald Trump's days as president are numbered. Thank you. As you all know, the Credentials Committee typically holds in-person meetings, but given the COVID-19 pandemic and the goal to ensure the safety of convention participants, all of the standing committee meetings are being held virtually, and I'll turn it back to my co-chair, Lorraine Miller, to continue.
Right. One of the first things we'll do is establish that we have a quorum of the committee members present for our meeting. In order to vote, ladies and gentlemen, members need to have two browsers open. One will be for Zoom and will be for the demcommittees.org portal. You can do that by having two windows open in your browser or having one of the windows open on two devices, such as Zoom on your computer and the portal on your tablet or smartphone. Please keep both browser windows open during our meeting. Votes will be displayed in the middle of the page in the portal. Members will use Zoom for our meeting, but not voting. Let me say that again. Members will use Zoom for our meeting, but not for voting. When a vote is called, you will need to go to the portal window and vote yes, no, abstain. Once you cast your vote via the portal, you will get a message that your vote has been registered. Please allow for your browser window to refresh after your vote has been cast. Because we do not allow secret ballots, vote results will be announced and a tally sheet with how each member voted will be posted on the portal. We will now register attendance for the purpose of establishing a quorum. We need each member, committee member, to please open the Credentials Committee portal on your browser and vote yes in the voting box. Credentials members will use this vote to register their presence. Now, a quorum is constituted by a majority of the total votes present, meaning members representing 91.75 votes. Staff, if you will confirm for us that we have a quorum. Are we voting? The vote is open now. Ladies and gentlemen, you have 30 seconds to complete your vote. 30 seconds to close. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Our vote is closed. Okay, for now we have 100. We have 151 yeses, 0 nos, and 0 abstentions. Thank you much. So I've been informed that we have a quorum. With that, I will now ask the DNC parliamentarian, Helen McFadden.
We want to make sure we start on time so we can
Someone, okay.
end on time. So I got a quick video from this.
I've unmuted myself again. Am I audible?
Now,
Oh,
Okay.
great. Thank you. Thank you, co-chairs. The credentials rules have been submitted to the committee in advance and are substantially the same as they have been for the past 30 years. There are major differences that are specific to having to have virtual meetings. I'll be calling your attention to those. The quorum rule is the same as what we have always had. The powers and duties of the chair are the same. With regard to meetings, your first rule here, 6A, has set the meeting today and has set it by virtual application. 6C makes clear that even though we are meeting virtually, this is still a public meeting. And I ask you to pay attention to the fact that though you may be at home in a very comfortable spot, the public is participating in this meeting and any interested Democrats are also here watching and listening. Rule 7 regarding the duties of the Credentials Committee is substantially the same, except that your report will be final unless there are committee reports. That was a change made in the call, the amended call to the convention. The supplemental proceedings, which are described here, are similar again to what we have always used, except with regard to making them virtual. Voting here, item 8, requires that all of the votes will be roll call votes. They will be the type of votes you just did under the direction of Chair Miller. You will be using those portals and you will be given warnings when the portal is about to close. Number 11, entitled Motions, again is tweaked for the virtual. And in order to submit motions, those will be done by pre-designated representatives. Item 12, debate, sets limits on debate. We have always had limits on debate, but this one again is setting it for the virtual. Item 13, minority reports, is essentially the same. In this instance, any minority report will be required to be submitted within 2 hours of adjournment. And as mentioned by the chairs, the Secretary's office will be doing the certification of the reports, just like they are certifying our delegates. Then I call your attention to the withdrawal of any minority reports, which is contained in Rule H. Thank you, Chair Miller. That concludes my report.
thank you, Helen. I will now call a vote to adopt the rules of procedure. Please vote now in the Credentials Committee portal voting box. As a reminder, votes will be displayed in the middle of the page of the portal. There will be no voting in Zoom. When a vote is loaded, you should vote yes, no, abstain. Once you cast your vote, you will get a message that your vote has been registered. Okay, 30-second warning that the vote will close. Eight, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Vote is closed. Okay. It looks like 158 yeses, 0 no's, 0 abstentions. It seems like we've picked up a few members since we took our first vote. Want to say hi to Keith Harper, who just joined us. Ladies and gentlemen, the rules of procedure have been adopted. Jim?
Thank you, Lorraine. Our first item of business will be to present the report of the Rules and Bylaws Committee. Under the call to the 2020 convention and the rules of the 2020 Democratic National Convention, this governing body was given authority to oversee the selection processes of convention participants. Under the delegate selection rules for the 2020 Democratic National Convention as adopted by the Democratic National Committee, the Rules and Bylaws Committee was given the authority to oversee the administration and implementation of this 2020 delegate selection process. Pursuant to the call for the 2020 Democratic National Convention, the jurisdiction over challenges to the seating of delegates and alternates transfers to this Credentials Committee on June 22, 2020, which was the 56th day before the convention. Throughout the 2020 delegate selection process, the RBC's mission was to ensure an open, fair, and honest nominating process for all who wish to participate as Democrats. In this spirit, the committee has endeavored to provide each state party with flexibility while following the rules set forth in the 2020 delegate selection rules in the administration of its delegate selection procedures. As you would imagine, given the news around COVID-19, we received requests from almost every state party to make modifications to their delegate selection process. We advised state parties to follow the recommendations of local health officials and prioritize health and safety of all individuals. We acknowledge the situation is very different in each state and want to give state parties flexibility to adjust their plans to address their own situations and local guidance. We worked with state parties that needed to make adjustments to their delegate selection processes to ensure their process could be conducted in accordance with the rules and without major interruptions. The committee's objective is always to have a process that expands participation for voters across the country. To that end, we are proud to say that the 2020 Democratic National Convention will be the most inclusive in history. Our next item of business will be to ratify the convention resolutions that were distributed and are in the portal. These resolutions address the questions which arose during the delegate selection process and have been subsequently resolved. The resolutions adopted today will be presented before the full convention. Pursuant to our rules of procedure, the process to consider and debate these resolutions provides that one of the co-chairs will recognize a member to introduce each resolution. After the resolution is introduced, we will recognize any additional speakers that have been pre-designated by the campaigns as provided in our committee's rules of procedure. After discussion, we will move to a vote. During this time, the speakers and time for debate on any resolution has been pre-designated by the campaigns. We will call on the speakers who have been pre-designated by the campaigns on each of the resolutions, as I stated. This process is provided in our rules to ensure our virtual meeting will run smoothly. Lorraine?
Okay. The chair will now recognize Brian McGlinchey.
Correct.
Great. Thank you for your help to offer
Very welcome.
Resolution 1.
Thank you very much. This resolution pertains to more than 50 states and territories where no challenge was received by the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee or the Convention Credentials Committee. The resolve clause calls for the delegations from these states to be accredited for the National Convention. I move approval of this resolution.
Great. Thank you, Brian. So we will now move to a vote. Please vote using the Credentials Committee portal in your browser and select a voting option, yes, no, or abstain. The vote is now open. Credentials members, if you haven't voted yet, please cast your vote now. Voting on this resolution will close in 30 seconds. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The vote is now closed. Okay. Our vote count on this resolution is 161 yeses, 0 noes, and 0 abstentions. And thanks for the new members that have come aboard. Okay. The resolution has been adopted. And we'll move forward. Okay. The chair will now recognize Karen Garcia to offer resolution number 2.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Appreciate that. This is Karen Garcia. I'm in Houston, Texas, trying to stay as safe as possible here. The second resolution has to do with the seating of delegates from Iowa. This resolution is about a challenge that was filed in Iowa regarding the implementation of the state's delegate selection plan. The state party provided a response to the challenge, and the response was not appealed. So there are no other challenges pending in Iowa. I move to approve of resolution number 2 that accredits the Iowa delegation for the National Convention.
Great. All right. Do we have other speakers on this one? You're it, Karen?
As far as I know.
We'll now move to a vote. Please vote using the Credentials Committee portal in your browser and select the voting option of yes, no, or abstain. The vote is open. Credential members, if you haven't voted yet, please cast your vote now. Voting on this resolution will close in 30 seconds. Nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The vote has closed. Okay. On resolution 2, the vote count is 123 yes, 0 no's, 39 abstentions. That's again, 123 yeses, 0 no's, 39 abstentions. The resolution has been adopted. Jim?
Thank you, Lorraine. The chair will now recognize Brenda Carter to offer resolution number 3. Brenda?
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution addresses the seating of delegates from Nebraska. This resolution concerns a challenge filed in Nebraska concerning implementation of the state party's delegate selection process in a county. It was determined that the challenge was not properly filed and was therefore dismissed. There is no other challenge pending in Nebraska. I move approval of resolution 3 that accredits the Nebraska delegation for the National Convention.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Are there speakers on this resolution? Hearing none, I think we can move to a vote. Please vote using your browser for the Credentials Committee portal and select the voting option, yes, no, or abstain. Credentials members, if you haven't yet voted, please cast your vote now. All right, this is the 30-second warning. We will be closing this vote in 30 seconds. If you haven't voted, please vote now. The time for voting has expired. Voting has closed on this resolution. And do we have the, asking staff if we have the vote now?
Jim, we have a vote total.
Okay, I do not have it in front of me. Yeah, oh, I do have it now. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Lorraine. The vote is 160 yes, 0 no, and 2 abstentions. The resolution has been adopted. Lorraine, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, great. Committee, we're moving on to resolution 4, and the chair will now recognize John West to offer resolution 4. Brother West?
Hi, my name is John. I'm in Chicago. The committee resolution number 4 concerns 2 challenges filed in Oklahoma concerning the implementation of the state party's delegate selection process. Neither challenge was properly filed, and as such, both were dismissed. There is no other challenges pending in Oklahoma. I move for approval of resolution number 4 that accredits the Oklahoma delegation for the National Convention.
Great, thank you, Brother West.
My pleasure.
Okay, we'll now move to a vote. Committee, please vote using the Credentials Committee portal on your browser and select the voting options, yes, no, or abstention. The vote is open. This is a 2-minute vote. Credentials Committee members, if you haven't voted yet, please cast your vote now. Voting on this resolution will close in 30 seconds. All right, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This vote is closed. While we're waiting on our results, I just wanted to share with you that we wanted to announce that because these resolutions have been pre-filed, we have recorded seconds on each of these resolutions. Okay, we have our vote total. 154 yes, 0 abstentions, 0 noes. So our number 4 resolution is adopted. And thank you for that, Jim.
Thanks, Lorraine. We will now recognize David McDonald from the great state of Washington to offer resolution number 5.
Thank you, Jim. And before I offer it, I just want to note that in my experience, the amount of controversy at a meeting is often inversely related to the amount of work that the co-chairs and the staff did ahead of the meeting.
Thank you, David.
I know that you and Lorraine and Patrice and Rick and Alicia and Elizabeth have put in a huge amount of effort in getting us to this point. With that, this resolution relates to the state of West Virginia. Challenges were filed relating to the implementation of steps specified in the plan. There have been ongoing negotiations. Those negotiations have resulted in the withdrawal of the challenges or other resolution. There are no presently pending challenges involving West Virginia, and I move approval of Resolution 5 to seat the West Virginia delegation.
Thank you. And as my co-chair, Ms. Miller mentioned, a second is on file. So because I am not notified of anyone who desires to speak on this resolution, we will now move to a vote. Please vote using the Credentials Committee portal in your browser and select one of the voting options, yes, no, or abstain. Voting is now open. This is a 30-second warning that we will be closing the vote in 30 seconds. Fifteen seconds remaining. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And the vote is closed. And we have the vote. It is 150 yes, 0 no, and 0 abstentions. Resolution has been adopted. Moving to our next matter, the committee has one active challenge before us, and that is a challenge to the seating of the pledged district-level delegates from Puerto Rico. This challenge was filed yesterday and concerns the fair reflection of presidential preference of Democratic voters in Puerto Rico's 8 Senate districts. Each side shall have 15 minutes to present their case to the committee, after which time we discuss the evidence presented and resolve the challenge. First, we will hear from one of our committee members, Representative Tatito Hernandez. Representative Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Roosevelt and Mrs. Miller. My name is Rafael Tatito Hernandez, minority leader of the House of Representatives in Puerto Rico. On July 12, 2020, the primaries of the Democratic Party were held in Puerto Rico. Each elector received 2 ballots, one ballot to vote on his presidential preference and the other ballot to select the delegates by district. The rules established by the National Democratic Party provide that delegates are allocated based on presidential preference, not direct votes for delegates. The Democratic Party of Puerto Rico promised to follow these rules and instruct the State Commission on Elections to do so. On that basis, the Puerto Rico delegate selection plan was approved. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico failed to follow through on that promise. That is a straightforward issue. The democratic rules read, delegate positions should be allocated so as to fairly reflect the expressed presidential preference of the primary voters in each district. The National Convention delegates select at the district level shall be allocated in proportion to the percentage of the primary vote won on that district by each preference, except that preference failing below a 15% threshold should not be awarded any delegates. Notwithstanding this clear-cut and unambiguous rule, on July 20, 2020, the president of the Puerto Rico State Commission on Election issued a certification confirming as elected the delegates of Michael Bloomberg in districts that did not meet the threshold of 15%. Only Joseph Biden exceeded the 15% threshold statewide and each of the 8 districts. Bloomberg exceeded 15% in just 2 districts. Ponce, 16%, and Humacao, 22%. Therefore, it is incorrect and a violation of the rules and regulations of the DNC that delegates representing Bloomberg in the District of San Juan, Bayamón, Arecibo, Mayagüez, Aguadilla, Guayama, and Carolina be certified, as the Puerto Rico State Commission on Election did on July 20, 2020. On July 23rd, 2020, I reached out to the chair of the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico and to the president of the Puerto Rico State Commission on Election requesting that this incorrect rectification be rectified and that a new amended certification be issued with the correct delegates. However, the chair did not take the correct actions. You will likely hear from Chair Rodriguez that his position is mandated by state law. That is wrong. The new electoral reform in Puerto Rico, Act 58, 2020, as well as the local law that was replaced with the new act, both require that the selection of delegates be done in accordance with the rules and the regulations of the National Party, not as determined by the Puerto Rico State Commission on Elections. But more importantly, the certification that controls the National Convention is the one made by the state party chair. The chair is bound to follow the rules, and he has chosen not to do so. This matter has been made very clear to him by me, by other elected leaders, and by the DNC chairman, Tom Perez. not unless the chair has chosen the course that has led us here today. Given the above facts and having exhausted the existing remedies without success, we have no other choice but to challenge the 8 incorrectly certified delegates. Only those delegates are the subject to this challenge. It's been no joy to me to have pursued this challenge. This is not a statehood or a Commonwealth issue. I am here raising my voice for delegates who believe in both formulas. This democratic nominating process is building on well-established DNC rules. They have not been followed here, and that's why I stand before you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Hernandez. We have received correspondence from Mayor Melendez that she has declined to speak. So next we will hear from our committee member, Tonio Burgos. Tonio?
First of all, thank you to the co-chairs and our distinguished vice chairs and to the DNC staff for doing an extraordinary job in putting this meeting together and the other 2 previous meetings. And Chairman Tom Perez, whose leadership has been extraordinary, indicated, Jim, that you and I have been to many conventions, my first being 1968. And yes, this is very unusual and very different. And I guess it's the way of where we are today. I stand to speak today on a matter of the Puerto Rico challenge. I have known the chairman of the Democratic Party in Puerto Rico, Charlie Rodriguez, for many, many years, and he was the president of the Senate and a distinguished leader. And I have rarely found myself disagreeing with him. But unfortunately, today I do find myself disagreeing with the great chairman of the party in Puerto Rico. The foundation of our nominating process is that delegates are allocated by presidential performance. The Democratic Party of Puerto Rico knows that and agreed to follow that process. But it has certified delegates pledged to Michael Bloomberg, even though they were earned by the vice president. This violation of the Puerto Rico party rules and its violation of the DNC rules. And we have to be consistent. And one of the things here we're looking for is consistency in our process in order to have a great convention and a great election in November. The issue, our chairman has led on this, has talked to the chairman in Puerto Rico. Others have talked to the chairman in Puerto Rico. And we unfortunately are in a place today where we have not been able to resolve this. So we have to work very hard to ensure that this simple resolution, that we certify the delegates properly named and direct the state chair to correct this terrible mistake and see it as a mistake and a misreading of the rules, and let's move forward. Adelante con Puerto Rico.
Thank you very much, Tonio. The time now for the challengers has expired, and we will hear from Chair Charles Rodriguez on behalf of the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico. Chair Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Buenas tardes. It is quite fitting that I appear before the Credentials Committee after President Obama delivered yesterday a passionate eulogy at the funeral of Congressman John Lewis. He said there that we needed to improve our Voting Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, by guaranteeing that every American citizen has equal representation in our government, including the American citizens who live in Washington, D.C. and in Puerto Rico. They are Americans, and I end the quote of President Obama. And I add, only with statehood can DC and Puerto Rico achieve equal representation in government. In the meantime, the only participation Puerto Rico is afforded in the national process of electing our president is the presidential primary. In Puerto Rico, under our local law, 2 ballots are required. And this is a primary that was held with government public funds. And the local law mandates 2 ballots, 1 ballot for presidential preference and another ballot to select the delegates at the district level. Both ballots, the voter must vote for their preferential preference. They need to vote for a presidential candidate in order to vote for the delegates. So just to give you an example, here is, well, I don't see you can watch it, but our ballot has the photographs of each candidate. And below, in this ballot to select delegates, it has the names of the delegates. A voter can only vote for a presidential candidate, and by that way, they're voting for the delegates. You cannot split the delegate vote, and you cannot make more than 1 mark on the ballot under a photograph or name of a presidential candidate. Therefore, the delegates at the district level were selected in this ballot precisely considering their preferential presidential preference as they expressed by voting. I also would like to mention that if this challenge proceeds, it has the consequence of nullifying the will expressed by the voters on the ballot. Nullifying the will of the voter is nothing more than another form of voter suppression. The people voted in both ballots, and they manifested their presidential preference in both ballots. 1 ballot to be used to apply or allocate the statewide or island-wide delegates, and the other ballot to allocate the district level delegates according to their preferential preference. Now, the primary process adopted or required to adopt rules of procedure. And the rules for the Puerto Rico Democratic presidential primary process adopted on February 4 of 2020 did define both ballots. The ballot which we are concerned in this challenge is the delegate selection ballot. And it is defined as the ballot designed and used for the voter to select a delegate group pledged to a presidential candidate in their congressional district. The presidential candidates and their representatives knew about this beforehand. This was nothing that was taken without their knowledge. Also, when you look at the ballot has instructions in both official languages, Spanish and in English. And in English, the instructions on this ballot say, instructions on how to cast a vote. On this ballot, you have the right to select only 1 presidential candidate with his or her group of delegates. You must make a ballot mark inside the rectangle below the number and photograph of the presidential candidate, or I should say number of the presidential candidate of your selection to vote for his or her corresponding group of delegates. If you vote for more than 1 presidential candidate, you will invalidate the ballot. As I said, the only way you could vote in that second ballot was by voting according to your presidential preference to select your delegates. Okay? As I have said, this is not contrary to what our delegate selection plan says, that delegate positions shall be allocated so as to fairly reflect the express presidential preference of the primary voters in each district. That's what was done on both ballots. In the second ballots, the voters would vote for their presidential preference when selecting their delegates. And it was according to that that the president of the Puerto Rico State Commission on Elections issued and certified the results of the election on both ballots and the names of those delegates that were selected. Now, this authority of the president of the Election Commission comes not only because the law is the one who gives him that, grants him that authority, but even our delegate selection plan mentioned in section 3A7, and you can find that on page 13 of our delegate selection plan, states that it is the president of the Puerto Rico State Commission on Elections who certifies the results and the names of the delegates selected. Even the advertising that was done locally in Puerto Rico by everyone was asking voters to vote on both ballots, even those who are challenging today. Even my distinguished member from Puerto Rico, Mr. Representative Hernandez, campaigned through the social media and through different messages that you had to vote in the two ballots, and that by voting the second ballot, you were guaranteeing the delegates at the district level. Therefore, we did the procedure as it was afforded by law. We did it according to our delegate selection plan that said that delegates must be selected according to the presidential preference, and that was the way they voted in that second ballot. And this process was done according, as I said, law, party regulations, and also the election regulations. I would like to add that the poll workers, when they would deliver the ballots to the voters at the polling stations, they would instruct, and they instructed the voters of the difference of both ballots and how it was important to vote in both ballots, in particular the second ballot, which was the ballot to select delegates at the district level, and that they would have to do it according to their presidential preference. So that is the way it was done. And that is why the president of the State Commission on Elections certified the results and the delegates in the way he did. Now, I would like to mention, and with this I will end, is that if this challenge goes through, really what we're saying is that the voters who voted according to what was the explanation under our law, under our election regulations, in the ballots, and even by the campaign that was done by everyone, not only by those who were in favor of Biden, but even of those who were in favor of other candidates, would be suppressed and would be nullified. And I don't think that is the correct way to act on this case. Now, for the future, I must add, I have lobbied with the Puerto Rico legislature, and they have, for the next cycle, established that only one ballot will be used, and that would be according to how the party expresses the way of that, the way that ballot should be presented to the voters. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Chair Rodriguez. There are 5 minutes remaining for anyone who wants to speak on behalf of the Puerto Rico Democratic Party. I don't believe there's anybody else, but I just wanted to make sure. All right. We will now open the floor for 20 minutes of debate and questions for both parties from those who have been pre-designated by both sides to speak on this matter. Given the virtual nature of our meeting, the co-chairs have decided to combine the time allocated in our rules for debate and the questions into one time period. Are there any questions or statements from members of the committee? Hearing none, we'll now entertain resolutions to resolve this challenge. Mr. Quintana, do you have a resolution? You're on mute.
Thank you, Co-Chair Roosevelt. Yes, there is a resolution to address this issue, and it's in the portal there. And I would like to introduce it for discussion.
Thank you. Are there any other resolutions? I'm not aware of any others, and I don't hear any others being raised here. The resolution has been properly seconded, and so it is subject to 20 minutes of debate. Does Mr. Quintana, would you like to make any further statement, or I can move on to somebody else?
Yes, thank you, Chair Roosevelt. This is a straightforward issue of a party not following their own rules. And it brings me no joy to bring this resolution, as I have nothing but respect and admiration for the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico and for the people of Puerto Rico. The rules are clear. The allocation of district level delegates must reflect the presidential preferences expressed by primary voters in the district. Our resolution to this issue, I hope, does not result in Puerto Rico losing delegates. It gives the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico time to correct this clear and blatant violation of their own delegate selection plan. As all other state parties had to follow their delegate selection plans, so should the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico. Their own rules were violated, so the state party should simply be asked to certify the proper and lawful slate of delegates. We have no desire to strip Puerto Rico of its delegates. In fact, we are proving a portion of their delegates, but we as Democrats must hold ourselves to our own rules for the legitimacy of our process. Therefore, this resolution, the at-large and pleo delegates will be certified. All but 8 of the district level delegates should be certified, and the remaining 8 delegate positions currently filled with delegates pledged to Bloomberg will not be certified, unless and until they are replaced with duly elected delegates consistent with the presidential preference of Puerto Rico voters. The Democratic Party of Puerto Rico will be given 1 week to certify this replacement. With that, I would ask for support for this resolution and in support of the voters of Puerto Rico. Pa'lante.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this resolution?
Yes, this is Lourdes Diaz. I would like the floor.
Lourdes, yes, please go ahead.
Regarding the Puerto Rico Credentials Challenge, it's a simple issue. The foundation of our nominating process is that delegates are allocated by presidential performance. The Democratic Party of Puerto Rico knows that and agreed to follow the process. But it has certified delegates pledged to Michael Bloomberg, even though they were earned by Vice President Biden. That is a violation of the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico rules, and it is a violation of DNC rules. This issue has been communicated to the Puerto Rico chair numerous times, including several times this week by DNC Chair Tom Perez. By the state party chair, nonetheless, certified the wrong slate. That must be corrected. The resolution is simple. Certify those delegates properly named and direct the state chair to correct these improperly certified. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Diaz. Evelyn Perez, would you like to speak?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Evelyn Perez Berria here in Florida, and the Puerto Rico Credentials Challenge is like Lourdes says, very simple. We need for the Puerto Rican community to have a full delegation. They deserve this representation as they are an intricate part of our nation. The Democratic Party of Puerto Rico knows this, and it is a clear provision in terms of this challenge. It's a clear provision of the DNC rules and a clear provision of the Democratic of Puerto Rico rules. As Lourdes said, this has been communicated several times to the chair, and including this morning, the Chairman Tom Perez has spoken to the Puerto Rico chair. We must correct this immediately. We must certify delegates properly named, and we must ask to correct those improperly certified. I, Evelyn Perez Verdia, second the resolution and speak in favor of it. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you very much. And next, I'd like to call on Robert Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I stand in favor and am seconding the resolution offered by Mr. Quintana. This is an unfortunate issue that could have and should have been addressed before this point, as 56 other states and territories have done by following the Democratic Party rules. Those rules are central to our nominating system, and they have been set and functioning well for decades. This resolution enforces that. Let us be clear also what about this is not. This is no effort to reduce the voice of Puerto Rico in our process. Puerto Rico's voice is valued and should be given effect. This resolution asks the chair of the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico to fulfill his role and allow his delegation to be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Next, I'd like to call on Heather Hutt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Co-Chair Miller, and certainly our DNC Chairman, Tom Perez, and to all our delegates that are taking this time in these unusual times to do what's right in the United States of America. I stand in favor and am seconding the resolution offered by Mr. Quintana. The rules are clear. They've been followed by decades of state parties as a matter of course. The Democratic Party of Puerto Rico promised the DNC that they would follow them too. The resolution requires the Democratic Party of Puerto Rico to follow through on that promise, and no more and no less. All of Puerto Rico's delegates should be seated, but they must be seated in accordance with the structure to which every other state and territory has adhered to. For these reasons, I, Heather Hutt, support the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hutt. Next, I'd like to call on Ellie Perez.
Hi, I'm Ellie Perez. I'm speaking in favor of the resolution. At the beginning, the Puerto Rico Democratic Party agreed to the process, and it's a process that other states have also agreed on. And I think it's important moving forward into this new phase of our party to continue to be united in this and have the same process for everyone. As my colleagues have stated, there was a clear violation. It has been attempted to be addressed by the chair of the Puerto Rico Democratic Party by Chairman Tom Perez, and there has been no resolution on their end. So I support the motion, and thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I would like to return to Chair Rodriguez to see if he would like to make further remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing I can say is that Puerto Rico, different from the other 56 jurisdictions that are representative in the National Democratic and Democratic National Convention, Puerto Rico by law has 2 ballots, and both ballots were used in a primary that was funded and run by the local government. We had to adhere to that, and what we did was that we adopted the preferential preference for every voter to select their presidential preference in each of the ballots. Therefore, the delegates at the district level were selected by their preferential preference. I cannot go against the law. I cannot go against the rules, the way we have interpreted the rules. And obviously, we will abide by whatever decision the Credentials Committee takes today. So that's basically what we just wanted to mention, and that I did not certify the delegates. It was certified by the person who was by law and by our delegate selection plan authorized to certify, and that was the president of the Puerto Rico State Committee, Commission on Elections. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. Now I will call on Alana Mounts.
Hi, everybody. Great to be with you. I'm Alana Mounts. And I just wanted to offer my perspective as a former state party executive director and talk a little bit about what I think this issue is about and what it's not about. This issue isn't about the disenfranchisement of voters in this process. I am supportive of this resolution because what it does is help preserve the voice of these voters, and the state party's chair's failure to follow the rules is really the only thing that stands in the way of these voices being heard. As a state that had to do its own delegate selection plan, had to follow the process and the plan, the rules provide the framework for our democratic nominating process. And those rules are straightforward. Those rules need to be followed, and our process really depends on it. The delegate selection process is something that we do every 4 years with the DNC. We work with them to make sure that these plans meet the party rules, and then we pledge to follow them. We pledge, that pledge and this process is central to our nominating process. And so this resolution, then having the chair follow its state party's plan. So for those reasons, I'm in support of the resolution and ask folks to vote yes on it.
Thank you, Ms. Mounts. The time for discussion has expired. I'll move to a vote on the resolution submitted by Jorge Quintana. Please vote on the portal. There are now 30 seconds left for voting. Please complete your voting.
There was some questions in the other room.
Well, we've got to count down the time for voting. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So before we announce the vote, I'm going to ask if there's any further information on that, on those questions.
Jim, I'm unable to vote, and I'm trying to get to the help desk. Go on with what you're doing. I just wanted to let you know. So.
Thank you. If that would affect the outcome, we will return to you on it, David. I'm waiting for the results of the vote. The vote was 151 yes, 4 noes, and 2 abstentions. So clearly, the resolution is adopted. And I will turn it back at this point then to Lorraine Miller.
Great, thank you, Jim. Our final business today, Credentials Committee, is the consideration of Resolution 6. The chair will now recognize Gus Bickford to offer resolution number 6. Gus? There you are.
Thank you, Chair Miller. This is Gus Bickford, Chair of the Massachusetts Democratic Party, and I am speaking about a resolution delegating enforcement authority to the chairs of the Credentials Committee. I'm presenting a resolution that gives the chairs of this Credentials Committee the authority to take necessary and appropriate action to ensure compliance with the resolutions we have approved today. In addition, this resolution authorizes the chair to place on the permanent roll any delegates and alternates selected subsequent to this meeting in accordance with the rules. I move approval of this resolution number 6 that delegates this authority to the chairs of the Credentials Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bickford. We'll now move to a vote. We announced earlier that seconds had already been recorded. So please vote using the Credentials Committee portal in your browser and select a voting option of yes, no, or abstention. The vote is open. Credentials Committee members, if you haven't voted yet, please cast your vote now. Voting on this resolution, number 6, will close in 30 seconds. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. The vote is closed. This is resolution number 6. And so our final vote on number 6 is 152 yes, 2 noes, 2 abstentions. Thank you for your support. Members, this resolution has been adopted. Credentials Committee members, we have taken action on all of the business before us today. The chair will now entertain a motion to approve the report of this committee to authorize staff to make any corrections of the report and authorize the staff to make any other deemed corrections. The report of this committee The report of this committee is considered final. We will now, so please turn on your video and unmute your microphones at this time. Is there a second? Please unmute. We need a second. Tony?
Second.
Tony, a second. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none and hearing no discussion, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, unmute yourselves. All in favor of our committee report will vote aye.
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 Unmute yourselves.
Aye.
There should be 150 something ayes or noes or abstentions. Let me say it again. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is that 150 people? Okay. Any noes? Any noes? Any abstentions? Ladies and gentlemen, the ayes have it and the motion is passed. Thank you much. Tim?
Thank you, Lorraine. So I would like to thank everyone again for their participation today. We appreciate all of your input on these important issues that the committee has considered. I have no doubt that our party is going to work tirelessly to elect Joe Biden and Democrats up and down the ballot all across the country. Lorraine?
Okay. I hope you're proud of the work we've done and accomplished together today. Thanks to all of you. This is not one person. We have a marvelous credentials committee, and I wish we could meet in person so we could all get a chance to give each other an elbow bump or something. But our staff, we want to give kudos to Patrice and her guys that have worked diligently on this meeting to make sure this would be smooth and seamless process. The strength of our party, ladies and gentlemen, is in its diversity, and there is more that unifies us than divides us. We all understand how vital this year's election is to our nation and to our future. Please turn on your video and unmute your microphone. And we have a motion to adjourn our meeting.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
I second. This is Keith Harper.
Thank you, Keith, for your second. There isn't any discussion on a motion to adjourn. It's been properly moved and second. All in favor, would you say aye?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No. And you can't abstain from this. The motion has passed. The ayes have it. The motion has passed. Thank you again for joining us today. Have a wonderful evening. And we look forward to seeing you on our virtual campaign trail and during our convention. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys have been great. Have a great evening. Bye.